Give me 1 second and I'll get started. That awkward moment when you start smelling at instead of putting the at sign. Alrighty. Happy Women's Wednesdays, y'all. For those of you all who do not know, my name is Soul Like Soul or Soul. I am one of the community health influencers. I am the host of The Bag, which is returning next week, Wednesday, with DJ Sean Dawn. And I'm also the host of Floetic Uptown and an art educator at The Corner, which I'm in right now. We have our inaugural exhibition up and open to the public. So make sure you visit our Instagram page at The Corner DC to see our hours, and so you can stop in and see the exhibition based off of Whitman-Walker's 43-year long run in history. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. Or you can just call me Soul. That'll be easier. So during the past few months, Whitman-Walker's community health department has expanded its outreach efforts to the social media platform. We cover various topics about HIV, STI, sexual health practices, access to care, social determinants of health, and general public health interventions. Our series of outreach sessions also focus on the current pandemic, COVID-19, and ways to manage your sexual, personal, and mental health during this time. The community health team is here to educate and support you. And today we're continuing a new series called Consent is Sexy. I wanted to use this platform to facilitate a conversation on consent so that we can work towards preventing sexual abuse, harassment, rape, and the effects of those kinds of violations, that those kinds of violations have on individuals and the community. And today I just wanted to talk about consent, kind of as a form of self-care. Most of our conversation today will be like my own thoughts and ideas with like just a little bit of information to support my monologue, since I can't have a dialogue with you all. But hopefully you find this to be helpful. And if you don't, let me know what you would like to see in this series and what things you would like to talk about surrounding consent. You can DM me personally on my personal page at Soul Like Soul. Personally on my personal page. Anyway, so I think it's important that we start to think about consent in like the most basic of ways. You know, when we think about consent, we tend to think about it only in terms of like sexual relationships, right? But I think it's so much bigger than that. It starts with our personal relationship with ourselves and with others. I think sometimes sexual violations can happen when someone isn't comfortable enough with their own voice to say no, or even speak up in an uncomfortable situation. Or even like speak up in an uncomfortable situation. And that doesn't make it the fault of the person who has been violated, but I do believe that we have to foster our own consensual relationship with ourselves. And that just means understanding our own body's sense of yes and no, our own desires, needs, and limits, and being able to easily and readily recognize when our bodies are trying to tell us that we don't want to do something, or Sorry, let me run it back. I hate when I lose my train of thought like that. But yes, No Filter DC said, consent is sexy and consent starts before the physical activities of sex. Exactly. So I think a lot of us have grown up being fed unhealthy messages about doing things that other people want, regardless of how we may feel about it due to like social obligations, right? So maybe it was that instance that you were told that you should also always kiss and hug an uncle whenever you see them entering or leaving a social space, without like any inquiry as to if that was something that you were comfortable with, or that you should like always be smiling and happy, as if like that is the only emotion that you're allowed to feel and should be expressing. So you can kind of think about how that might have made you feel, being told you had to do something to seem polite, regardless of whether the situation made you uncomfortable or if it was inauthentic. So you might be wondering what this has to do with consent, but I think it's really fundamental to it. Being able to recognize the signals in your body that tell you that you're having an emotion is a crucial way to determine your wants and needs. These signals can tell you when you're safe or in danger, when you want something, or when you really, really don't want something. And without being connected to our internal desires and limits, it's really impossible for us to consent to anything. And I think like even as we get older, we sometimes find ourselves in social situations where it's kind of accepted and expected for people to like push and cajole or like otherwise force people into doing things that they like don't want to do. And it can be like something as simple as, you know, just have just one more drink, or try this new food, or stay out later, or come out with me to this party. You know, it can be understood as friendly banter rather than like a consent violation, but it's important, like I said, that we have our own understanding of our own sense of yes or no, and that we are using our voices so that nobody can ever say like, well, you didn't say no, or like whatever. Like regardless, it would never be our fault or the individual's fault if they were violated in a way. But I also do think it's important that we continue pushing for ourselves to be more connected with our voice and with the ways that we are practicing consent for ourselves. I think it's also like important to do this in like just the smallest of ways, you know. You can.
Excuse me? Trash?
Yes.
No problem, sweep for you?
Well, I could do it.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so I believe that like this is something that we need to think about even in the smallest decisions that we have. It can help us voice our yeses and nos more confidently. And it can help us, of course, in our sexual interactions, being more confident in saying yes or no to things that we don't necessarily want to do. We can practice consent as self-care when we do things like ignore a call from someone simply because you don't want to talk. You know, I think some of us sometimes fall into like, you know, just having phone conversations or like long text conversations, or like being on FaceTime with someone just because they called. And like, especially now, like we're so disconnected physically, like, you know, we really do treasure the moments that we can talk to people. But like, you know, I think even in this time where some of us are alone a lot more, it's still good for us to remember our boundaries and to confidently assert them. Like for me, you know, Sunday is my self-care day. Like I might not, that's my day that is for me. If part of my self-care means hanging out with you, then like, yes, I would do that. But like Sundays, if you ask me to do something, I'm more than likely going to say no, because Sundays are about me, and that is just something that I have adopted, and I'm quick to ignore phone calls if I'm not in the mood to talk. I'm quick to, and it's also good to communicate with that with people, so that people don't feel like, there's something wrong in your friendship or relationship, and you're not, obligated to do those things. But it would be nice if you could just be like, hey, I'm actually not in the mood to talk, but thanks for calling. Like, I'll hit you up later. So that's an example, when we say no to social activity that we don't necessarily participate in, but all our friends are doing it. That's a way to practice consent as self-care. We also can practice this when we are in conversation with someone and the topic changes to something that makes us uncomfortable, and we let the other party know that either the conversation should end or we should switch topics. And I think these are some self-consent practices that can help us when it comes to sexual consent. Communicating that you are like okay with one thing but not the other. It just becomes a force of habit for you, and like, just because someone else did this thing doesn't mean that you will, or just because you did this thing before, doesn't mean that you will. So today I really just wanted to focus on that and talk about other ways that like we practice, consent, practice having that conversation about consent, and how we practice it with ourselves, how we practice it with other people. So like those same things that I said I have boundaries for, my friends might have other boundaries. Their boundaries might be, hey, I don't want to have conversations after 9:00. That is a boundary. And if you call that person after 9:00, you're violating, this thing that they've set for them. Basically, when we've had to override our emotional or physical responses to situations, a lot of us stop trusting our bodies and our own sense of our own boundaries, limits, and desire. So learning about self-consent for me is really just talking about getting that back and getting that power back for yourself, and finding our emotions in our bodies, working out how to find an embodied sense of yes or no, and feeling entitled to it. So I hope this little monologue was helpful. I hope it sparked some more thought on how to really dissect the concept of consent. Please sorry. Yes. So please don't forget that Whitman-Walker is open for free HIV/STI testing by appointment at our Liz location on the corner of 14th Street and R, and at our Max Robinson Center location in Anacostia on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue and Chicago Street. To make an appointment for HIV/STI testing, you can call 202-797-4439. And as always, social distancing is the way to reduce the amount of vaccine. I'm thinking about the vaccine. Be sure to watch our Whitman-Walker Heroes videos and listen to why some of the staff members decided to take the vaccine. I thought it was a really good video to watch, and it definitely made me think a lot more about my decision to take the vaccine. But all in all, social distancing is the way to reduce the amount of COVID-19 community transmission. It deliberately increases the physical space between people to avoid spreading the illness. That also involves staying at least 6 feet away from other people when possible, wearing a mask in public and in closed spaces, avoiding places with large crowds, encouraging work from home if possible, speaking with loved ones over the phone and over FaceTime instead of in person. Social distancing is a way to care for our community, so please do that. And remember to wash your hands. for at least 20 seconds at a time. Please don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and IG at Whitman-Walker and at RealTalkDC _ and at The Corner DC to stay up to date with all things Whitman-Walker Health. If you all have any questions, of course, you all can reach out to us as well. Thank you all for watching. Till next time.